Hello to all of you. Awesome to have so many of you online tonight. And we've got quite an interesting evening ahead of us. We're going to be sharing, not so much, we tend to do a lot of webinars and stuff on property, but I wanted to share with you just some of the experiences we've had in the last couple of months. And I think really, you probably understand that a lot we do within the business is based on the sharing side. And sorry, I just want to check, can you see my webcam there? Oh, you can see it now. Okay, great. And so really, the purpose of tonight was just to share. I also would really like a lot of questions tonight because it gets a bit boring for me. I've got a lot of notes that I've prepared and been through my notebook, my iPad, and my recordings. And I want to share with you lots of different lessons, but I think the more you ask, the more interesting it'll be for me. And I got back from America last Thursday. I presented on Thursday evening. I presented again on Friday morning. I had Saturday and Sunday at home, and I was up to Joburg yesterday, and I flew to Cape Town this morning at 4 a.m. So my energy levels are fairly low, but saying that, the more questions you ask, then hopefully the more value that I can add. So I've got Kevin is here with me, and him and I will be working together. So if you can just shout any questions in terms of where we're at. I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an intro in terms of where we are and kind of what we're doing and what's important. So just if you look there, A360 stands for Abundance 360, and it's an event that when I was invited to Necker Island in 2015, there were two events that I was told I needed to go to. One was Abundance 360 and the other one was South by Southwest. Now you don't just go to Abundance 360, you have to be invited by someone who already knows you. You have to be interested in technology and how technology can solve some of the world's grand challenges. And anyway, I was lucky enough to get introduced by Roger and by John, and I got invited to go to Abundance 360. Now, Peter Diamandis has written the book called Bold. I highly recommend that you go and get the book Bold. I actually wouldn't mind if you just type in there Bold and Peter Diamandis just so people can copy it. Now, I will tell you can't buy it in South Africa, so you have to go on Amazon or Kalahari or I don't know. You have to figure it out. You have to buy it overseas. It's not available here. But it is one of the best books I've certainly read in the last couple. I'd put it in my top 5 books in terms of business. It really explains what's happening in the fintech space and how you can really learn and adapt and crowdfunding and everything. It really talks about where technology is going. At this event, he invited some of the most incredible speakers, one of them being Ray Kurzweil, you can see over here. Now, Ray is referred to as by Bill Gates as the father of artificial intelligence. And Larry Page has actually just hired him to do the artificial intelligence for Google. So, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ray Kurzweil as well. Then from there, in March went to South by Southwest. This wasn't by invite. This anyone can go to. I highly recommend going to it. It's one of the biggest technology events globally. And it was so important that Obama was actually there live talking about technology and how the government wants to invite technologists to really come to the table and to really add value. And it was fascinating. Zuma wasn't there. And but anyway, very proactively wanting to look at technologists and how government is going to play in the 21st century with the evolution of technology. And again, I'll get more into that. This guy here, Gary Vaynerchuk, is someone I would highly recommend. He's got a podcast called The Ask Gary Show, or Gary V Show, whatever it is there. You can see it up in the top right corner. And, he's one of probably the most respected internet marketers, internet businessmen out there, certainly in the top 5. And, really interesting guy. The only downside to him, which is something I'll probably share a bit of as well, he swears quite a lot. And, which frustrates a couple of people. But what an authentic, just really awesome guy. And again, I'll share quite a bit about what we learned from him. And then thirdly, I was very privileged to, be invited back for a second time to come to Necker Island. And this is the island. You can see it here on the screen. And, got to spend time with Richard. This was actually a picture from 2015. Unfortunately, this year we didn't get to spend as much time as we did last year. He was going through the hostile takeover of Virgin America, where he made $1 billion the day that we were there. $1 billion US, just to put it in perspective, and was really upset. So tonight I'm going to share with you some of the things and why and some of the lessons that we learned. And, I always joke, but, the man's 65. He's one of the fittest people I've ever met. He's got an awesome family. and he loves to have fun. And this was just a picture of us at one of the dress-ups, and this was him and I and a friend having some fun at one of the other dress-ups. So we will get into the detail, but I think also, one of the things in life is don't take yourself too seriously. And I really enjoyed not just spending time with Richard, but 20 other incredible entrepreneurs. And I've got a huge amount to share tonight. So I don't know how long you want to go for. I can go as long as possible, but I've got a lot to share that I really want to get through. So I want to get started with what motivates people. Now, if you've watched some of my presentations before, or some of the presentations we've done at the breakfast or the team or anything, you might actually have an idea around this. But I want to see if you, firstly, are concentrating, and secondly, are engaging. And I wanted to understand what motivates people, because I think some people will be sitting there and they'll be going, how do I go to Necker Island? Or what have I got to do to meet Richard Branson? Or how do I go to Abundance 360? And so my question is, what motivates people? What's the most important thing that people are looking for when one's looking at motivation? So if you're not quite sure, you can go to the top right corner and type it. But yeah, I'm going to have some fun tonight and play and engage, and I'm really interested because there's no right and there's no wrong, and different people are writing down what they want. So we've got financial freedom, reaching my goals, freedom, passion for property, value, a challenge, helping others. So thanks to all of those of you that are putting stuff in there. Goal driven. Cliff, I haven't moved more than 20 meters from when I saw you today. But anyway, to be a value, balance. Okay, so there's a lot here, helping others, etc. So that's awesome. And I think really the more you know what motivates you, it's really, really critical. There's a brilliant TED Talk that I would highly recommend called, it's from Simon Sinek, and it's How Great Leaders Inspire. If you just type in there Simon Sinek and how great leaders inspire, I don't know the exact wording, but it'll come. And it's fascinating because everyone around the world kind of focuses to start off with on the how and the what. So they're like, well, how do I do this? Or what have I got to do? And the question is really why. And once one gets very clear on the why, then it's very easy to actually figure out the how and the what. So if I look at just some of these, Anne wanted financial freedom. If you get very clear on the why, then that'll motivate you. But if you focus on the how and the what, then you're going to get, I always joke the analogy of walking around a mountain. You're going to walk around the base of the mountain, and every path will do. But when you get very clear on your why, it's like the top of the mountain. You get very clear on, on the top of the mountain and why you've got to get to the top of that mountain. Karine said, reaching my goals. Okay, great. Why? Anton said value. Cliff said goal driven. Kuba said to be a value. Dimitri said helping others. They're all right. There's no right and there's no wrong. But it's this simple formula that when you get very clear on the why, then you will make it happen. So I wanted to share with you just personally, even why we're doing this webinar. For someone who's been up since 4 a.m. this morning, I'm sure many of you would be sitting there going, why on earth would you want to do a webinar to a couple of hundred people this evening and just really share the information that you've learned from events that cost a hell of a lot of money and a lot of time to be there? Well, I wanted to share with you my why. And I think the more that you understand why we do what we do and why I do what I do and why we as a team do what we do, then you'll probably get to understand us a little bit better. So quite a few people have not even seen this before. I'm not even sure if Kevin's seen this before. But I have a mission statement that I created about 2 years ago. And it's I create a world of wealth, health, and happiness by having lots of fun and inspiring growth and change. So what does that actually mean? And we then formed the wealth movement, and the why behind that is that living in Africa, we see poverty every single day, and the wealth gap for me is very disturbing. I come from a place where, if you've read my book, Property Going Global, you will know that I came from a middle-income family, but I also dealt with poverty quite closely with my father, unfortunately, being bankrupted. And so for me, I came up with something at a young age that money would never be a problem to me or anyone close to me. As I grew up and I understood what technology was, I was like, well, hang on, rather than just solving it for me, my friends, and my family, why don't we extend this to a much, much deeper, broader level? And the more that, that I've researched it and the more time that I've spent in the last 17 years of my life, we've been looking at how technology can solve the problem. And really, when going to Abundance 360, as an example, was that the big question there is, how does technology solve the world's greatest problems? Well, the greatest problem, according to the World Economic Forum, that the planet has is the wealth gap. And what's really interesting is that we formed the wealth movement because we said, well, we want to go out and empower 1 billion people. And then people go, well, why do you want to do that? And well, it's very simple to me, because it's the greatest challenge on the planet. When you live in Africa, you see poverty every single day. And most importantly, in our lifetime, it's feasible. And let me show you the how and the what as to how we see ourselves doing that. So there's 3 legs to the table. I feel very strongly that if we empower children with entrepreneurship training, then that's the greatest freedom you can give anyone. No one can control you, no school, no university, no boss, no country, no tax man. And so we found a charity out of America called Lemonade Day, and we brought it to South Africa. And it's like a McDonald's system, but ultimately it only does 2 things. It teaches a child self-belief, and it teaches them how to make 1 rand, $1, €1. And effectively, it teaches them about entrepreneurship training. And I truly believe that if we want to live in Africa or the emerging world, or to be perfectly honest, anywhere on the planet, if we don't empower the children, we have no future. The second step is empowering women. What most people don't know is that 2/3 of all women, or 2/3 of all illiterate people are actually women. And when you empower a woman, they have 9 times bigger impact on a community than men do. So unfortunately, I'm a male, and that puts me in the redundant section of the curve. But really, and I've got some stats actually later. I'll just tell them now. 66 million girls are looking to get educated. The number way to solve poverty is to educate teenage girls. They've done a study that in India, you can increase the economy by $5 billion if you educate just 1% more of the women or the teenage girls. So, I mean, the stats are actually there as to how and what to do. And specifically when it comes to finances and investment, it's been a very male-dominated world. 96% of all venture capital in America has gone to white males from 4 universities, just to put it in perspective, if anyone disagrees with the numbers. And then the third leg at the table is really empowering everybody. And, I really, truly believe that, and I think many people in our team believe that with this little gadget, there's 1 billion handsets now in Africa this year, 1.1 billion in China. There's about 900 million in India, and it'll soon tip 1 billion. And with this gadget, there's 3 things that are going to happen. Firstly, people get access to education. So where there's just no schools, no teachers, they'll get access to education. Then they're going to want access to health. And finally, they're going to want access to wealth. And we truly believe the greatest way to solve the wealth gap is that when someone can invest $1 per opportunity in the same type of opportunity that Henny Besaidnout or Hilda Lunderstedt or Donald Trump is getting the opportunity to invest in. So the same quality deals with the same relative returns, but with their $1, with their $10, with their $100, versus putting it in some crappy funeral policy. And so I'm going to share with you later tonight, and I'm going to share with you a lot of lessons leading up to it, but I'm going to share with you tonight how we are literally launching in the next, well, it's just more than a week, our freedom opportunity, where people will have the access to invest with billionaires with $100. And now, rather than just going, oh, it's too good to be true and whatever, well, now you understand our why. And our dream is to get it down to $1 per person per investment. And it's why education is such an important part. So I'll start off with the very first thing, and Peter Diamandis says this, if you want to be a billionaire, what do you have to do? So Charles, you're asking about what Richard's biggest points were on how to create a world-class brand. Good news for you is I've got the answer to that. I'll bring that up now. And what's the criteria on how to get invited to Richard's Island? I'll make sure that I answer that as well. We are solidly aligned on the 3 pillars, and that's good. That's why you and I know each other. And okay, so I just want to get invited there. So I'll definitely answer that question because there's a section that I want to cover that in. Okay, so I think what's really, really important is that, when we built IPS right back in the beginning, back in 2004, the entire model was built on this statement from Zig Ziglar. You can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. So most people think that life is about getting, but it's actually about giving. So to be honest, if you want to be a billionaire, the easiest way to be a billionaire is to help 1 billion people. I also wanted to put this in perspective because this is a beautiful saying and it's so simple, yet so many people don't take it into account, is it's from Confucius, and it says, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. So tonight you're going to get a lot of information. Now, just with all due respect, and I probably should have brought my book along, but where's my iPad gone? So if you take my iPad, I can basically, for those of you who know me, you know, every single meeting I have, I'm using Notability, which again is a very, very good app. And you're literally in here and you're making notes all the way through. So if you go into, I don't know if you can see my webcam there? So if you go into the learnings, you know, I've got South by Southwest, I've got every single session in terms of what's happening there. If I go into Abundance 360, I've got them all there, and I've also got the same for NECA. What I also do is I handwrite all my notes when I think it's really excellent. And then what I did on top of that was actually go and write all my notes down in preparation for tonight. So if you think I'm OCD and anal, I am. But in many ways, the reason I'm telling you that story is not to boast, but to show to you, who do you think is getting more value out of doing this webinar, me or you? Yeah. So I can see a bunch of people are coming through, and both I agree to an extent. But ironically, at a selfish level, you know, I'm getting probably more value than anyone, because what it does is it takes the lessons learned in January, the lessons learned in March, the lessons learned in April, and because you have to synthesize it and prepare and go through it all again, it really internalizes the stuff. So again, I'm only sharing this with you because what are you learning that you could share with other people? And ultimately it helps you in the process. And possibly even, and I'm happy to share these crib notes with people. So if you want to just write the word crib or whatever, I don't know. I'm sure we can send it to people, but then you'll have it. And you know, maybe it'd be worthwhile, you know, you sharing something with others. I also think that, you know, we've spoken a lot about the inner circle, and we really, you know, I mean, effectively what we're doing now is really, you know, part of the inner circle and where we're going and stuff. But the old days was about, you know, come along, come to my course, come to my mentoring session, come to my coaching session. I'm going to charge you a fortune, and then good luck, go out there in the world and hopefully buy some property or do something, start a business or something, I promise you. Whereas I believe in the 21st century, it's again learn by doing. And one of the reasons we're forming the inner circle, and one of the reasons Dolph DeRoos is so actively involved, is that we want to help people invest by doing. So, you know, if you're investing $100 and you invest by doing, but you're investing with Henny and learning all about the due diligence process and everything else, like that is 1,000 times better than reading a book on commercial property investment. I can guarantee it because I've done it for 5 or 6 years in terms of what's happening. Okay, so I can see there's lots of comments coming through here. I wanted to start off with 6 major trends, which, you know, I've shared with a number of people, and these are 6 trends that, whether you like it or not, are going to change your life. Those 6 trends that came up at Abundance 360 at South by Southwest and with all the entrepreneurs at NECA Island. And the first one is the deception of linear and exponential. Some of you that know me well are getting quite bored of this, but really it is such an important understanding. And most people understand linear, and that's, you know, how business has always been done. And then you've got exponential, and it goes through this whole period of disappointment. And you know, no one heard of Uber for it's been in existence now for, this is its 7th year. And no one heard of it for the first 5 years. And yet suddenly now everyone knows about it. That's a classic example of how it goes underground. People don't know what's going on, and then boom, it pops through to the other side. And there's a couple of things that I think are really important. You know, Ray Kurzweil said that a 1% improvement only needs to double 7 times until it's 100%. So what these guys do when they're looking at predicting the future, they're not looking at something growing at 20 or 30%. They're looking at multiples. So if you literally go from 20 investors to 40 investors to 80 investors, that's what they're interested in, because it's that multiplication effect that really takes, you know, that is massively, massively important. They also talk a lot about our future coming up. Now, most people are in agreement that we're sitting, and it's why there's such amazing interest and investment in the fintech space. I'm going to share that with you. And we're literally sitting at this tipping point. And there's only going to be 2 futures ahead for you. One is one of amazement, where you're like, wow, I really understood this. I went and read a book like Bold. I read a book like Exponential Organizations. I read 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And I really kind of got my head around what is happening and where the world's going. And because of that, I used those skills, and I now live in a world of abundance and amazement. And the other one is where you're a taxi, association, and suddenly Uber's come along and it's just wiped out your business. Or you're a bed and breakfast operator or a hotel operator even, and Airbnb's just come along and literally wiped out your business. And there's nothing you can do. Like, they undercut you, they're better than you, they're better marketed than you. There's nothing you can do. And that's a world of chaos. And so you've kind of got that choice to make. And I'm not going to go into this in a huge amount of detail, but I highly recommend you go and look at the 6 stages of disruption that Peter Diamandis talks about. So the first one is digitization. So effectively, we take the property industry. It's an old school industry, many archaic players, but it's being digitized now into ones and noughts. The second stage is deception. And that's the stage where people look and they laugh. And ironically, we had a meeting today with a guy called Gerard, and Kevin and I were having a laugh because with Gerard, because I remember having a conversation with him in 2009. He's one of the most successful property developers in South Africa. You all know the company, so I'm not going to mention names. Let's just consider them probably one of the most successful property funds in the country. And I sat with them and the fund managers and told them about crowdfunding and what we were going to do in 2009. And they virtually laughed me out of the room. And it was quite interesting almost having the conversation 5 or 6 years later. And he's like, wow, it's an amazing opportunity. I'm like, I know, dude. I told you that 6 years ago. So that's the deception stage. And then what happens is that's when the 1% becomes the 2%, becomes the 4%, becomes the 8%. And boom, it literally takes 7 steps to get to 100. And that's when we move into disruption. And that's where we're sitting at the moment in the fintech space and the crowdfunding space, where the deception phase has moved through now, and we really are coming into the disruption phase, where it categorically disrupts an old industry and actually creates a new industry in its path. Now, if you're interested, you can go and literally just do a Google search, the 6 stages of disruption or technology disruption, and it'll come up. The last 3 are demonetization, dematerialization, and then ultimately democratization. Wow, that's a big word for tonight. And ultimately, what I love about democratization is that's exactly where wealth will go, where everyone will have access to it. Knowledge will be accessible to all. And we ultimately, what in the past was only kept for kings and monarchs and queens, and then it was only kept for the really uber wealthy, it will now be available to everyone from a wealth perspective. So that's the journey that we will be going on, whether people like it or not. The second thing that I think is really amazing is that the emergence of the emerging world. And Peter Diamandis talks a lot about the rising 3 billion and how they literally are going to be joining the global connectivity. And a lot of people look at Africa, and some of you might or might not recognize the picture or even the ANC flag there, and they just see poverty and disease and corruption. But what I see in China is a billion people, and Africa is a billion people, and India is a billion people. And they move fast into the middle class, and they want the necessities of health and wealth and education. And they're going to be joining the global community. And he talks a lot about the voices. Again, I recommend you go and watch the TED Talk by Peter Diamandis on the rising 3 billion and the impact that this is going to have. And really, one that you all need to understand is China. What is happening in China is just unbelievable. There are 1.1 billion people, actually 1.3, I think, 1.3 billion people. They all speak one language. A lot of people think of China as a communist place. It's the furthest thing from it. If you haven't been to China and you want to be a business person, then you're dreaming. You have to go to China. It's compulsory. You need to get on the ground and understand that there's 300 million Chinese middle-class people with between 50 to 85,000 US dollars in their bank account. If you have 10 million US dollars, you don't have private banking in China because so many other people have that amount of money. $400 billion left China just last year to invest in England, Australia, and America, and Europe in terms of real estate property. Last year, 10 million Chinese people went on holiday. Over the next 3 years, they're expecting that to be 100 million people. And just to put it in perspective, the average person spends £5 on duty-free, whereas the average Chinese person spends £35. So if that's not enough stuff just to kind of whet your appetite, really, and I believe that living in the emerging world, living in Africa, living in South Africa, understanding how to deal in the chaos is one of the best things that you could ever do for you or your children. The third one is globalization. And, it's quite interesting. We're talking about Necker Island, and I can see we've got the beautiful picture behind me there with Necker Island. And really what globalization means is that you can live locally, but you can think globally. You can have a business. I live in Neisner, but you can have a business that's on 5 continents. You can live, and I'm the furthest one to have done this. Richard Branson's been living on that island for 30 years, long before internet even existed, and run, businesses all around the world. But, where it was this maverick entrepreneur in Richard Branson, it's now becoming more and more popular for people. And, I could go into this in a lot of detail. I'd highly recommend a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss that teaches people how to do it and what they can actually do. But what I think is really, really critical is that particularly for South Africans, but for others that are online tonight, we think too small. We're in Cape Town and we get excited if we expand to Joburg. And that is really a major, major problem. Like, we need to think global. We need to think, wow, we know how to, provide services within the chaos of emerging markets. We need to consistently think, how can we go out there? And, Justin Clark is a mentor and a great friend of mine, the guy that owns private property. And I remember years ago with private property saying to him, well, you're going to go to Australia, England, America. He goes, why would I go there? Those are overtraded markets. I'm going to go to the emerging world. And, today he's in 16 countries in Africa and all over Southeast Asia, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's the mindset. The fourth one is mobile. Absolutely everything happens through this thing. And it's quite interesting because I've already told you some of the numbers around handsets, both in Africa, India, China. What's interesting for me, though, in China, and again, if you haven't been to China, then you see you're not picking up these type of trends. They walk around with WeChat on their phone. So I'll just get WeChat up so you can see what WeChat looks like. Most of you are probably on WhatsApp, but WeChat's what's happening. And they pay for their taxis on WeChat. They pay for when they go in the coffee shop, they use promo codes on WeChat. They pay each other on WeChat. They pay for their coffee on WeChat. They do everything on their cell phone. They have all these games. They move more money in one day through their red letter day than something ridiculous, like 100 times more than the Americans do on their Black Friday, Sunday, whatever that same Black Monday sales day is. So really, mobile is the fourth major trend. The fifth one is the digitization of currency. So a lot of people get confused and they get caught up in Bitcoin and blockchain and whatever it is. The bottom line is that life is actually simple. And what is it all? It's currency. In the old days, we used to use shells. Then we used gold. Today we use the US dollar. And in the very near future, we're going to use a digital medium. And it's still all currency. And Bitcoin is just one of the forms of currency. And blockchain is the foundation upon which the technology is run. And whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it's going to happen. And it's about a distributed ledger. It's about getting rid of the middleman. And I'm going to explain to you tonight how business and banks are going to change fundamentally from what we know. But it's the fifth major trend which is going to take place. And the sixth one, which I like a lot of, is that business has fundamentally changed from the I business, where it's all about me, it's all about profit, screw the environment, screw my employees, even to an extent, screw the customer, to it's about people, profit, planet, or people, planet, profit, whichever way you want to look at it. And the bottom line is that, we love, and Wealth Migrate was born on the principles of nature, the laws of nature. And what I love about, birds flying in a flock is that they can fly 70% further than a bird flying on its own. But what do animals migrating have in common? They trust each other, there's complete transparency, and they're all in alignment. Like this bird at the front here, flies for a while, and then when it gets tired, number 2 comes in. They're not trying to always be effectively trying to win every race or screw the guy behind them, etc., etc. And that is what I believe is so exciting, is that when you look at what's happening around the world, 75% of CEOs are not trusted to look after their team, to make decisions in the best interest of the environment, or to be fair, even in the interest of their customers. And technology is lifting that interface and really providing that transparency. And that's really exciting. So it's a sixth major trend, and it's happening again with or without us. So when you look at what technology is doing and the way it's disrupted many, many businesses, there's 3 major things that it does. Firstly, it dramatically cuts the costs, it cuts out the middlemen, and it really increases the efficiency, the trust, the transparency, and most importantly, the accessibility. And so what does that all mean? Like, those are 6 major trends that I now want to bring together and talk to you just some of the lessons that I've learned at the different events in terms of where we were actually at. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything really were you having a problem on the connection side? I see that some people. So a person said number 2, it was emerging markets. So I'll talk about Richard Branson's work schedule now. So I'm just going to work through the 3 events quickly. I've spoken about linear versus exponential. One of the things that's really important, and again, it's fundamentally different from what a lot of South Africans think, but experimentation is a fundamental key. The key to creativity is giving up on old ideas. So whatever you knew in the past doesn't work into the future. You need to be able to give it up. One of the things that I love most is that both Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil spoke about interface moments. They said if you want to be able to predict the future, you need to look for an interface moment. So what does that mean? Well, in simple terms, the internet had actually been invented, many, many years before 1993, 1994. But it was only when the likes of Netscape came along, and I can't name the different operating systems or the different, what are they called, basically, Internet Explorer and those type of things. That's what's called an interface moment, because what it does is it takes an underlying complicated technology and it makes it easy for the man in the street to use. And from 95, everyone knows that that's when the internet completely took off. That's an interface moment. So what they always say is that if you want to look for where the future is, look for interface moments. Look for where things are coming together. When they looked at progress, they spoke in the last 11 years, it's become over 1,000 times cheaper to start a company. In the past, you had to have servers and everything else. Now it's a huge amount cheaper. In China at the moment, they can print 10 houses a day for $5,000 a day. Oh, sorry, $5,000 a house. So for those of you in the construction industry, if you think your profit margins are locked in, good luck with that. Because they're building, 10 houses a day and $5,000 to digitally print them. And the other one that I love is that a Kenyan recently won a gold medal throwing the javelin and learned the entire thing on YouTube. How cool is that? My mother's a teacher and she keeps telling me that people need actual teachers. It's not the truth, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it. Ray Kurzweil had 141 predictions over the last 30 years. He's got an 86% accuracy. And he says his number one way for predicting trends is to look at long-term waves or long-term trends and look at the intersection of them. So, that sounds a little bit complicated until you think about it, because what have I just shown you in terms of 6 major trends? So from a Wealth Migrate perspective, we're looking at the major trends of exponential, we're looking at global, we're looking at emerging markets, we're looking at mobile, and we're looking at blockchain, all meshing together, and we're effectively creating a solution for where the world's going to be in 3 or 4 years' time. So some people sit and they think, well, you guys are crazy. Maybe we are. But the point is that that's exactly how Ray Kurzweil does it. They look on a 3 to 5 year window frame, they look at long-term trends, and they look at the emergence of those. Now, I'm going to give you some dates as to why 2020 is such a critical day or year. They also say about changing the rules. So at the moment, everyone owns a car, where in the near future, literally, cars will just be a commodity that you can just use. Like, they're just available wherever they are. And they also talk about how difficult it is to change the rules. So what most people don't know is that when cars came out, you actually had to have someone, by law, walk next to your car and make sure that they were removing the livestock. So if you know me well enough, I consistently ask to challenge the rules because I don't think all the rules are necessarily right. MTP is a massive transformative purpose. It's having a purpose of something that's much bigger than yourself or making money, and how that's probably one of the most potent weapons in business. They talk about, and this was one I love, there's a massive opportunity wherever there's excess capacity. So let's look at that. If you look at Airbnb, there's a lot of rooms out there, and so they created a platform to leverage excess capacity, and now today you've got Airbnb, which is worth $26 billion. Uber was even more interesting. You had a bunch of people with cars, and so they leveraged the platform, they leveraged that capacity, and today you've got a $50, $60 billion company. Now that works in both ways. If you've got excess capacity, it's also a massive risk to you. So if you're a hotel room with excess capacity, someone like Airbnb is going to cut out your margins. Giving back, and the number one way to solve, I've explained this about teenage girls. Some predictions I thought you might like. Know anything you want, anytime you want. So going forward in the near future, we'll be able to know anything we want, anytime we want. Scarcity will be contextual. In a world where you can do anything, why not do something which matters? Peter Diamandis. Find something you would die for and live for it. Go and check out a guy called Tom Bilyeu. I can't pronounce it. And again, I will share these crib notes if people want them. If they don't want them, then they can be Confucius and they can just hear and forget. If you're not using the cloud community versus your team, you will lose in the long run. So what does that mean? We're sitting in an office here. We've got a whole lot of team members. We still are not using the cloud enough. We're not going out. We are thinking exponentially, but we're not using the cloud enough. And in simple terms, if you're not using the cloud community versus your team, you will lose in the long run, because the best talent is gravitating to the cloud models. By 2020, this is a critical date. By 2020, the knee of the curve, where the majority of the global population is coming online in the next 4 years. So there's 2.5 billion people online right now, 2 to 2.5 billion, and the next 5 billion will generally all be coming online in the next 4 years. Now, just coming back to what I said, interface moments and long-term trends. Do you or do you not think that that is an important date? Kevin?
That's pretty important.
Okay. What about the focus on AR versus AI? So AR is augmented reality and AI is artificial intelligence. So augmented reality is where I'm sitting here. So at the moment we've got a screen behind us. Screens will no longer exist. We will be wearing glasses or some sort of other imagery, and we will literally be able to put a screen anywhere, like out in the environment, on a wall, on a glass, on this desk, on a computer. You won't have computers, you won't have iPads, you won't have screens, because you can literally put. And then I can be looking at Kevin, so I'm looking at him in real life, but I can look past him, and there can be like his LinkedIn profile standing like right next to him. So you're seeing real life and augmented reality all in the same process. Now, artificial intelligence, most people know about, and that's computers getting cleverer and ultimately being able to think like a human brain. Now, why is this all important? Well, there's an interface moment coming now with AR and AI, and as an example, estate agents will no longer exist. Because why would you need an estate agent when I can see the house, I can use augmented reality to walk around the house, I don't even have to go to it, I've got artificial intelligence to give me all the information, I don't need a middleman. Full stop, love me, hate me, don't shoot the messenger. Okay, 80% of all businesses will be using AI in 5 years. AR's inflection point is when it goes wireless, which is expected to be 2017. So right now with AR, if you're walking around, if Kevin's got his glasses on, he's walking around and it's plugged in with a cable, it doesn't work so well. But with where material sciences are going, they expect by 2017. So that's the inflection point. Personalization is huge. So everyone wants everything personalized. By 2027, we will have our own digital online assistants. They'll be able to read all our emails, answer our telephone calls. So whether you're Richard Branson or not, you will be able to have access to that personalization and technology. And this is where it gets a little bit freaky for some of you. By 2030, we'll have nano robots which are in our body. They'll be the size of blood cells. They'll literally be able to plug into our brain, which will be able to plug into the artificial intelligence on the planet. And you will be able to literally do Google searches using your brain, like just by thinking things. Okay. By 2029, computers will pass the Alan Turing test. 10 years, we'll end disease. By 2029, you'll be able to eat anything and not get fat. That's a significant date for me. 2033, they'll destroy cancer. And by 2048, they're going to be able to wake up the frozen. So Walt Disney, they'll be able to wake him up, the guy on ice. The next 15 years, you won't need any renewables because of solar. So every day, more than 10,000 times more energy actually hits the earth just from the sun's rays. So like, if you're investing in petrol or coal or any renewables, you should really be aware of this. They're going to create another 200 more cities by 2050, but with global warming, they're also going to have to move 200 cities like New York. And then lastly, the last two things that I think are important here, real estate, land values are going to change dramatically because of transport teleporting. They had the head of Uber product development talking about supersonic travel and how if you can go 600 kilometers, like imagine from Cape Town to Knysna in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, who says that the coastline all up the coast would not become a hell of a lot more valuable than everyone trying to live in the CBD of Cape Town? Now you start to think out the box, you start thinking places like Zanzibar or Mexico or, and you really, because people are going to move to lifestyle. 3D printing and material science means that you'll be able to print your own house. You'll also be able to redo your own house. So Cliff's online. His children have moved out. Right, we don't need to have all these bedrooms anymore. We can have bigger living spaces. This stuff, I know, freaks a couple of people out. But, blending of nationalities. There's no such thing anymore as a Mexican or an American or a South African. People are cross-border global citizens. And then lastly, on the education side, with where things are going on AR, the interface moment, learning by doing, gamification, and blockchain, I had a conversation with a teacher on Friday, and they were whinging about how they, always earn the least in the environment. Well, actually, with blockchain, the best teachers in the world are going to earn the most. And so again, it's going to fundamentally disrupt education as we know it. So in conclusion, and then we'll move to South by Southwest, people and platforms are creating the collaborative economy and reinventing capitalism. The world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities. So if you want to become $1 billion company, help 1 billion people. I would suggest that you play with the toys. I don't have my wife's, what's the word called? Condolences or whatever on this. No, that's not the right word. But anyway, I wanted to share with you. I'm a very big believer. I've always loved playing with gadgets. And I wanted to share with you why I think it's really important. So in at the age of 6, my parents took me to a computer course and I started to learn Logo. I think it was 1983. And I literally had to play around with gadgets. So then I bought a drone. So if you haven't bought a DJI drone, I highly recommend it. It flies all over the place. It takes all these digital photographies. It's absolutely amazing. But what I've done more recently, and let's see if this is going to work, I bought this, what effectively is a robot. And a lot of people laugh at me, but, at the moment, these robots are, pretty much like in 1985, 87, where you had these big cell phones with people, the massive thing, and everyone laughs. Because basically this is like a big iPod on wheels, and it can move around. But right now I'm beaming in. I'm sitting in Cape Town in an office. I'm beaming into my home in Knysna. Apparently I'm not. So why is the connection to the server not working? My wife's probably switched it off so that I didn't. I'm just going to update. Anyway, I'm going to keep going. I'll come back to that just now. Because maybe it's this is what it did this just the other day. It had to be updated because I was on a Mac. But anyway, I want to show you the way you can actually log in and you can now talk to people, and then I can move the robot from where I'm sitting here on my computer and on my iPhone. And so, like, I bought it for my son so that my son can learn about robots. I can also drive it around. But in the very near future, we'll have one in all our offices, Beijing, Cape Town, Joburg, whatever, because you can literally turn up to meetings. And what's super really exciting is that, in the very near future with augmented reality, all this stuff is going to, like, ultimately it won't be an iPad-looking robot. It'll literally be Kevin sitting right next to me, where the Kevin actually won't be here. Now, again, you look at me and you go, this Scott guy's kind of really has lost the plot. But I think what's important is that if you don't play with these gadgets, you never know what is the possibility of how you can use them in business. And so, I got this at Abundant 360, and I just want to try one last time before I move on here. It's pretty cool, this technology. Just see if it works. I don't want to leave it too much later, otherwise my wife and son might be sleeping. Oh, it's working. Boom. So now, look how cool this is. Okay, log in. So, hello. Hello, Johns. What you up to tonight, boy?
Tomorrow I'm coming to you.
Ah, no, I'm going to see you in Joburg tomorrow, eh? And are you? So, boy, I'm just showing some people how the robot works. So I'll see you tomorrow in Joburg, eh?
Okay.
Okay, love you lots. Sleep well tonight, eh? So, just for the record, oh, there we are. So I've now parked the drone. Good night, Johns. Love you. So anyway, that was a little robot thing, and I can drive that all around the house, all over the place. The only thing it can't do is go up and down stairs. And then lastly, aim for where it will be in 10 years and then create it. So I think we've spoken a lot about trends. And the last thing I love, which I heard there, was Uber yourself before you get Kodak. And most people know about Kodak and the fact that they invented the digital camera, but they didn't bring it to market because they worried that they would go out of business. Well, they were right. And so, it's a great little saying. In your business right now, always ask yourself, what have I got to do to Uber myself before I get Kodak? Okay, let's move to South by Southwest. Lots to share tonight. So Gary Vaynerchuk had some really, really good lessons to share. And one of them, that I found amazing was always say thank you to people. So, I took this picture with him, and he was saying thank you to everyone walking in. He says that you must never take people's time, stop sending emails, invite them into your space. Snapchat is the platform that we should be watching. Every 21-year-old is actually using it. He spoke about stamina and how your employees are never ever going to have the same energy you do. And if he really wants to create $1 billion business by doing good. And what I love so much is his positive attitude. He goes, "You all won the lotto," and people are like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, because you're alive." And it's a pretty cool way of looking at it. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, which a lot of people, are asking themselves, is about digitization and what it means to our children. As you saw, my 4-year-old son there, going to sleep, and he's got robots and iPads and quadcopters and everything else. And the average age of a kid now with a cell phone is 11.9 in America. They talk a lot about how you should have no rules around digital time. So a lot of people are very specific, but actually you should have no rules. And if it doesn't get emotionally charged, then kids grow up, being able to look after it themselves. Technology is not the magical bullet, but it is a game changer and has fundamentally shifted society. And I think, again, from my parents' perspective, getting me to do logo when I was 6, I've always just loved technology and what's happening. But this is the one that I love most, and this guy was amazing. He was actually just a school teacher himself, but loves technology and everything and really specialized in the space. And he asked the question, what do we need to do when we're in school? And he went on to go, and actually talk about how, most of us passed the game of school. And I got into a whole lot of trouble last week because I said I really hated double Afrikaans, and you can't get angry with me for that. I just didn't enjoy languages and whatever. But I had to learn how to pass Afrikaans so I could get my matric. Well, that's the game of school, and it really is that education. Is that what we want to bring up our children to be able to do? And so, he talks a lot about the flipped classroom model, which I know Khan Academy does, which you watch the lesson online and then you go to school to be with the teacher to do the homework. And I even got hold of our headmaster. I was like, "Are we doing the flipped classroom model?" Because that makes perfect sense to me. And then everything should be about the growth mindset and what we can do for our children in terms of growing their mindset. We need to see technology as a tool for creating, not consuming. Parents need to be curious about what their kids are doing online. There need to be clear boundaries and consistent follow-through when they're broken. Parents need to do what they say. So it was actually a lady, and she was talking a lot about how she tells her kids not to do screen time, and then she spends lots of time on her cell phone. My son, which is not a proud moment, but he broke mommy's cell phone this weekend because apparently mommy plays games on her phone, and he was upset. So again, be the example that you want to show your children, and don't be on the phone. There's a great book that I recommend called Conscious Parent, so you can go look that up. It's called Conscious Parent. And then lastly, what they were talking about was parents are responsible for kids' development, not the school. So I found that pretty interesting. Then the next section was a guy that was one of the 6 founding members of PayPal. And if you know or don't know, you had Elon Musk and the PayPal mafia, as they call it. And he spoke about big ideas. And I love this quote by Gandhi, where they pretty much, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And he was talking about the evolution of what happened with PayPal and exactly how they went through this. And he was talking about 5 major opportunities right now. Now, some of you won't know what these are. And to be honest, I don't have enough time to go into them in detail. And again, if you've got the crib notes, you can go and Google them. But the first one is, I can't even pronounce it properly, but it's Beffians. The second one is human assistant artificial intelligence. The third one is software eating software. The fourth one is regulatory arbitrage. That's exactly what Wealth Migrate's doing. And the fifth one is fractal knowledge, which again is exactly what Wealth Migrate's doing in the fintech space. And so I highly recommend you go, and I'll just repeat that. It's Beffians, human assisted artificial intelligence, software eating software, regulate, which is primarily in the banking space. Again, you might notice where everyone sees the opportunity at the moment. Regulatory arbitrage, and then fractal knowledge. He says he's very bullish on artificial intelligence and augmented reality. And the other one that I love to hear was that he's very bullish on cross-border e-commerce, which is pretty interesting for the space we're in. And then anything within efficiency is an opportunity. Fintech is the second biggest industry after energy in the world. He said if you want to have a business idea, walk into any bank, take their brochure off the counter, and every single one of their services is an opportunity. And then he spoke quite a lot about blockchain. And then what I found fascinating is that there were 2 Israelis that were talking about building a $1 billion business. They both built a $1 billion business, and how it takes 10 years to do it. So everyone thinks it happens in 3 seconds. It doesn't. And some of the key lessons they learned is that they hire on passion. They only deal with transparency. So literally, even in the days where cash flow was very weak, everyone knew what it was, so that they weren't employees, they were partners. and they went out. One of them spoke about the biggest mistake they ever made was actually bringing in executives and making it corporate and not staying a startup. And then after 5 or 6 years, he realized the problem. He sacked all the executives and went back to being a startup. And they went backwards 12 months, but it was the best thing they ever did. And they talk about how hiring is the hardest part. The other guy, and it's this company here. So they're the guys are in the. You can see the J curve. So this is just important from a funding perspective. Most people don't know about the J curve in building billion-dollar companies nowadays in the exponential space. And then these were the guys here that were talking, both Israeli guys. But what was interesting is this company, they spoke about how they've got 3 values, and it's really simple: innovation, be brave enough to fail, passion, and humility. That's it. Like really simple, really clean, really, really beautiful, basically. They spoke about how they both had to relocate to the USA. The CEO needs to be where it drives the most value. Now notice the difference in this. The CEO needs to be where it drives the most value. The founder needs to be based where it creates the competitive advantage. Interesting, the difference between the two. You need to be near to your market. Your communication must be massive. Transparency is everything. And the interesting thing about not living in Silicon Valley is that everywhere else in the world doesn't think big enough. And then lastly, everything for them is about partnerships. You heard this today, Kevin. The one guy said, we're good at dating. We're not very good at dating, but we're very good at marriage. And then look for aligned. This guy here, which is the other company, said it's all about looking for an aligned agenda with your customers, which I think we spoke about with the 6 trends. I do love this quote. And, literally, we cannot become what we want to by remaining what we are. So a lot of you will be sitting there going, yeah, blah, blah, Scott. Well, the problem is that we've learned a lot of stuff, and that stuff actually holds us back. So we need to almost forget what we've learned. And there was a great session on Zappos. So if you don't know who Zappos is, I would highly recommend that you go and check out Zappos. And they were talking about, it's been one of the leading companies for people to work for. It's got the highest customer satisfaction surveys, and they've just implemented a system called Holacracy, where people are leading efforts. They don't have a top-down structure. It needs really good systems. The compensation tool is where people actually are in charge of their own destiny. So you write your own novel rather than climbing a job ladder, and they adapt it to change. And what was fascinating is that a year ago, Tony Hsieh said to the whole company, if you don't believe in the vision, then please leave, and we'll incentivize you to leave. And 18% of people left. Now, when you've got 1,000 plus employees, that was a lot of people. But his logic was, well, we don't want anyone here that's not tying into the vision. And now everyone that's left is entrepreneurial and autonomous, which is exactly what they want. And the last thing they said is that bad decisions are celebrated. So again, as South Africans, we tend to be risk adverse, don't make decisions, hate to get into trouble, and that's really the opposite. And then the last thing that I wanted to share from South by Southwest, which I really think is absolutely fascinating, is what's happening in fintech. And there was a company called Uphold that I highly recommend you go and check out. So $19.1 billion has been invested in fintech over the last 3 years. $13.2 billion has been invested by venture capitalists. In 1990, we had the first wave, which was the innovation wave, but now we really are moving into the transactional wave. Uphold, to give you an example, has 87 employees. Citibank has 400,000 employees. And in the last 12 months, Uphold has moved more money cross-border than Citibank has. What's also interesting in the UK is that generally a bank like Lloyds or Barclays will charge you £25 to send money to South Africa or America, yet it only costs them 2p. That's the arbitrage. That's the fractional side that they were talking about earlier. Western Union charges 12%, so the poorest of the poor, their only way to send money is through Western Union, and they charge people 12%. And $26 billion a month leaves America to go to Mexico. So, and you think about Western Union on 12%. And he literally was like, I don't know how the CEO can sleep well at night. Like, you're literally raping the poorest of the poor, and effectively there's 100 million people in America that are unbanked. 100 million. There's only 300 million people in America. 100 million of them are unbanked. So the banks that will survive will be the wealth managers. The regulators, nothing has changed. The banks are still fractional. That's where if they get $1 in, they can lend it out 33 times. And all the power in the banks is in America. They vote, they do all the legislation, they've got all the what do they call, the lobbyists, etc., etc. And if you think that we're joking, Walmart tried to start a bank and they got stopped. So Walmart, one of the biggest companies in the world, they got stopped just to prove the power of the banks. But what's interesting with the banks is they're creating walled gardens. They're very scared about what's happening. Barclays Bank, as an example, has 42 different projects in blockchain alone. But what's fascinating is it takes them 6 months to do a PowerPoint, whereas the average fintech company is onto version 3 within 6 months. And what's interesting is that the consumer, and these are the exact words, I'm not making this up, the only people who don't get screwed by the banks are the big corporates because they've got the ability to negotiate. In fact, we just had that conversation an hour ago where a guy said he's got 100,000 properties under management and he can negotiate with ABSA. And what's really interesting is that I told you already about the 100 million unbanked in America. The banks will disappear in their current form. Yeah, baby. And Bitcoin, well, he then went on to talk about Bitcoin. And he said the problems with Bitcoin is that there's 950 people in the world that own more than 50% of all Bitcoins. So it's not exactly a distributed currency. And there's been more money invested in mining Bitcoin than there actually is in Bitcoin currency in total. So Bitcoin is just a currency that people have heard of that ultimately runs on blockchain that is the underlying platform. Blockchain, there's been 1.26 trillion invested from the banks in venture capital so that they can understand this because they know that this is going to take them out. And he spoke about 2 stages. The first stage of fintech is money transfer. The second stage is peer-to-peer, real-time equities liquidity, which is interesting with our digital exchange at Wealth Migrate, lending across the board, insurance, and wealth and asset management. And then, really, where we're going with fintech is that trust is now being democratized. Everyone has access to trust and transparency. And what I love, the very last thing they said is millennials don't like the banks, but they like their phones. So if you want to go and look at a long-term trajectory, banks, phones up, in terms of what's happening. I've given you some of the stats around China, so I'm not going to repeat those. And so that brings me on to Necker Island, and probably a lot of you here will be wanting to know some questions. So again, there are questions coming through, and I will answer each and every one of them. So just a couple of things. Last year, I did a webinar on Necker, and I also did my 5 or 6 lessons I learned every day. So you can go to my YouTube channel. If you just put in scottpicken.tv, so scottpicken.tv, it forwards to the URL, and you can actually go see there's a playlist there, and it's got Necker Island Lessons 2015. So I go back and listen to them. It's very, very valuable to learn the lessons. I did that again this year, so there's the 2016 lessons, the daily lessons, and if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get wealth insights each and every week. Now, just to put in perspective, I've got about 20 videos where I've recorded Richard, literally where we were asking questions. I've also recorded some of the other amazing entrepreneurs. Some of you might have seen the Wealth Insight just yesterday from a guy that started a company and sold it for $800 million, and he shares his number one thing that helped him do that. So, I recommend you watch these Wealth Insights. The logic being is that, again, the why we started off with, we're just trying to share the knowledge, and we get the privilege of dealing with some of the best and wealthiest people around the world, and my attitude is, why should it only stay in their heads, or why should I have the privilege of learning it? Why shouldn't it be shared with everyone? Okay, so there were 3 main questions that we ran a survey, and there were 3 main questions people wanted to know from Richard Branson. People voted on it and it went up. So the very first one, the number one, was what motivates him. So just in my interest, Kevin's not allowed to answer this, but anyone else, what motivates him? If any of you have watched the videos, let's integrate a bit here. Let's play a bit. Does anyone know what motivates Richard Branson? You've got 400 companies, you live on that island, you play tennis every morning at 7 and every evening at 5 against a tennis pro, you kite surf every afternoon, and you only work in the mornings to answer Mariela's question. But, what motivates you? Why do you get out of bed? You're 65 years old. Does anyone have any ideas? So let's just see if none of them will come up or no one's got an opinion. Where will Necker Island be 2050? So family life, empowering people. So it was interesting. It was actually to keep learning. So and I've got this on video, so you'll be shared it as a wealth insight. He said it's to keep learning, and one of the reasons that he does, Virgin Unite and the Carbon War Room and the Elders and everything, he says it's the most amazing experience. I meet these amazing people, I get thrown into difficult situations, and I keep learning. He says, why do I have 400 businesses? Well, I figured out how to run a magazine, so then I wanted to run a music store, and then I wanted to run an airline. I just get to keep learning, and that's what motivates him. That's what gets him out of bed. So yeah, he has lots of fun, family, making a difference in the world. They're all right, but the number one thing is to keep learning. The second question was the biggest risk, and just 2 seconds. And the second question was, what's your biggest risk? I actually asked him this personally, and again, I've got this on video under the Wealth Insight, and he joked and he said, when they were doing the ballooning across the Atlantic, when they were preparing, they had to go up in the balloon, and they had to learn to parachute just in case everything went pear-shaped. And so he was up there with two instructors, and he's dyslexic, so he can never remember his right from his left. And the one cord is to pull your parachute, and the other one's to release your parachute off if there was a disaster. And he couldn't quite remember if it was left or his right, and he pulled the parachute, and the whole parachute came off. And the guys had to rig up an emergency parachute. I would really recommend. There's a movie that's just come out. It's literally coming out this week, and it's called Don't Look Down. And it's the most amazing movie, all about him and his mom and his dad and his upbringing and how he does stuff. And I highly, highly recommend that you go and watch that. And then the third one was, how does he balance family and work? And again, this was my personal question I asked him at dinner, because it's something that really kind of amazes me. And, you run 400 companies, you've got a very happily married, you're in love, you love your wife. You've got two great kids, both in their 20s, that have, really grounded and down to earth and just normal, great people. How do you balance all of that? And he said it's because of Joan, his wife. He said she's been the complete rock in his life. She's been there for him, been there for the children. She's an amazing person, and it was really quite amazing to hear that, because my wife is a major part. I'm here on this webinar down in Cape Town, and she's the one at home, looking after John T, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just interesting, and again, the appreciation that he had and the gratitude actually brings tears to my eyes. Okay, so just some of the other key points here. Leadership. He spoke a lot about leadership, and if you've read any of his books, he talks about intentional listening, and how when he was a reporter, most people don't listen. They talk too much. They don't listen. And how he used to take notes. So, I don't know where my book is. It's actually in my other bag, I think. Let me just check here quickly. I just want to make sure I don't have it on me. But he talks a lot about how he makes notes and how he writes everything down. What's absolutely fascinating, I've actually got it here. So here's my journal, and I make notes, and I then highlight, when things are really, really important, ideas. I don't know if you can see the webcam. You're seeing the webcam, no? Okay. But anyway, so I'll show you my book just now when the webcam's off. So you can just see, there's my notes, handwritten. There's a lot of science out there that if you handwrite and you draw stuff, then you're going to remember it a lot more than if you type. So I tend to record everything on Notability, because I can then have the voice recording, but I write my notes down. This is my special little book. It's my NECA book from 2015 and my NECA book from 2016. So all my other notes don't go in there. But my point being is that what's interesting with him is that you can be a complete idiot talking about the most ridiculous business idea, and he's still sitting there writing notes, listening, asking questions, and engaging with people. Then the other thing that was really interesting, and I've still got a long way to go on this, but was quality note-taking. So when you're taking notes, also drawing pictures, and some of the very wealthy people there, and there's one guy that was 36 years old, he runs 15 different companies, he's run a shipping container company, literally a shipping company out of Europe. He's 35, 36, I just want to put in perspective. 15 different companies. He sold his one business that had 400 white-collar workers, and he said it was one of the smaller ones. The scale at which America operates is just unbelievable. But he actually went on a course to do note-taking and drawing, and so that his notes could be a lot better, basically, putting in pictures. And then they also talk a lot about the team and getting the team to work as a family and care for each other. And I mean, honestly, when you look at Virgin, but specifically the team that's on NECA, it just really is taken to another level. When we discussed on the Monday when we were there, Virgin America was taken over in a hostile takeover by, I keep forgetting it, Alaska Airlines. And what happened was when they brought in Virgin America, they were only allowed by the American government to own 20% of the airline. And what was really interesting is that there was a lot of fund, I don't know what you call it, but bondholders, fund managers, etc., that had brought funding to the table. And these guys came along and effectively bought him out, and he didn't want to sell. And he made $1 billion the day we sat there. And rather than singing from the rooftops and spraying champagne everywhere, he was actually really upset by it. He was like, it's the best airline in America. We've got a brilliant team. And he literally said, if they mess with my brand or they mess with my team, I will literally start again. Because clearly there's no restraint of trade when you have a hostile takeover. But he still made $1 billion. And he said, and again, I've got this as a wealth insight. You can watch it. He said, that's the whole thing with money, is that what is really important about money? You know, life is much bigger about a much bigger purpose. And you know, I've just made $1 billion, and I'm upset and I feel empty, and that's not what life is about. And he also spoke a lot about how, which is a little bit off the record, but how he was upset with his senior people in Virgin America because they had, you know, they wanted to just take the money and run. And life is about building, you know, big picture stuff and long-term visions and really being, you know, out there. The fifth one that I really wanted to talk about was culture. You know, this guy, ironically, was Wealth Insight just yesterday, John. And John talks, you know, he literally built a company at $800 million and sold it. And he talks about how culture drives organizations. He's got this thing where he says, we own the employee's experience. So, you know, you can blame everyone else, but the bottom line is, as the leaders, you own the experience. And he's got a great question where every single day he asks his team to say, what can I do today to make my employees' experience better than yesterday? And then they had this rating system at Appletree where 0 to 6 was you did that. How happy are you at Appletree? 7 to 8, it's like mediocre. 9 to 10, you know, you're really, the employee is happy. And their logic was happy employee, happy customer. They had all the metrics to prove it. They were a call center. So, you know, Vern Harnish called them the sweatshop of the digital era. And, you know, so it's not even high-end computer science guys. It's guys in a call shop. But it's really interesting. Happy employee equals happy customer. And they had a program called the Dream One, and I highly recommend you go and watch the Wealth Insight on the Dream One, and how he said that that was the #1 catalyst as to how it was between 80 and 90% the reason that they were able to sell for 4 times more than the industry average and sell for $800 million, which is pretty interesting. He talks about how every high-growth company needs a fundamental operating system and how culture is the most important one, that most people get to 30 or 40 people by sheer will. I laughed at this, Kevin. And, you know, he said, rather be the dumbest person in the room, and then from 40 to 120 is the most dangerous point. He said the founder is key to the strategy, but then you need people that, you know, have relentless execution. And he said the most important thing with Richard Branson and successful business people and sportsmen and people that play chess is that they see patterns, and then they have the ability to inspire people to actually go and do it. He talked about communication. I know Roger Hamilton talks a lot about this, but you know, talks about what are the 3 to 5 things that we're going to do for the year, for the quarter, for the individual. You know, the systems need to be consistent. The communication needs to be repetitive. You know, as Roger talks about it, and again, there's a great YouTube link that maybe you can even put up if you can find quickly, where Roger talks about that rhythm where you've got the annual review, you've got the quarterly review, you've got the kind of weekly review, and then the daily review on the flight deck side. I think Ricky actually shared that with us on Slack. And, you know, and he talks a lot about this rhythm. And I know for a fact that I battled with this, you know, up until about 2 years ago, and it's really starting to pay real dividends from a communication perspective. And they also talked a lot about the daily huddle and how getting all the senior people together for 15 minutes every single day was one of the biggest competitive advantages. And I thought that John was the only one. And as we went around the room, there were 20 people in the room. At least 15 of them were doing that and attributed a lot of success to that. So if you're not doing a daily huddle, I highly recommend you Google daily huddle and see what comes up. It tells you how to do it. But it should be no more than 15 minutes. If you're in different offices, no problem. You just phone each other. And we implemented that as of Thursday last week because for me, it's all about learning. And then, and the other one I liked was weekly. They have awesomeness shout-outs. So it's things around the team. How do you get awesome? What's happening? Who's done awesome stuff? And you know, we're trying to do that also within our team. He spoke a lot about strategy and how it's a great story told backwards. Roger Hamilton talks a lot about having a future vision. So where you go to the 31st of December 2016 and you write backwards for everything that happened in the year and what you're grateful for. You talk about it in the present tense and how it happened. The only difference with John, and I've actually done this once before with some of our team members, where I shared my future vision, and his 13 key executives then actually used that as like the blueprint. Oh, wait, this is the year, this is what we're going to do, which was really, really interesting. I spoke about time management and the difference between delegation and abdication. So I'm famous for abdication, which basically means good luck, go and get the task done and figure out how you're going to do it. And delegation is really, if you want to scale a business, you have to be able to delegate. But there's 2 things you have to do. You have to lower your expectations because no one's ever going to do it the same way you think you can do it. And secondly, you need to be able to close the loop. So, you know, Hilda said something to me just yesterday. What would you expect? You know, what would be the feedback that you'd be expecting so that you can tell them what you're expecting? They can go and figure out how to do it, but then what's the feedback loop? And that's the difference between delegation and abdication. The one I love most was talking about the 80-20 rule. So most of you have heard of the Pareto's principle of 80-20. What most of you haven't heard about is that if you spend 80% of your time in your flow and 20% of the things aren't in your flow in your job or your company, but you get someone else to do that 20%, but that 20% represents 80% of their flow, and then they get someone to do the 20% that they're not in their flow, which is 80%. Ultimately, what it gets down to is that literally 1% of your effort equals 50% of your results, and you get to do what you love every day. So then you ask yourself the question, well, how come Richard Branson gets to kite surf and play tennis and live on the island? Well, he's implemented that to perfection from a delegation perspective. So, and I would recommend a book there called The One Thing. So the book called The One Thing, which is really, really good. And then the last couple of things here that I've got, I've got quite a few things, is that modern business. So this was the lady that runs Virgin Unite, and she was sharing all the stuff that's happening around modern business. I've already told you about the 75% of people don't trust CEOs, but they talked about how in Virgin you've got to love the people in the company because they ultimately breathe the life and the spirit into the company. They spoke about how PwC says that the shared economy, which is crowdfunding and fintech and Uber and Airbnb, is going to be worth $335 billion by 2025, and that equity crowdfunding alone is going to be 48% out of China by 2022. Just in case you wonder why I'm going to China on Thursday for a month. And then Richard, some people asked some questions earlier about what makes, how do you build a brand globally and how do you have such great customer service? And I just wanted to write down some quotes that I literally took from him, literally. So when people said, why did you start the company? He said, I wanted to make people's lives better. He said he always dreams about how to create a company with distributed joy throughout the company. So if you've read his books, you'll know about his parties with 60,000 people plus, and his staff parties are legendary and et cetera, et cetera. And when you get to Necker, like everyone just is having so much fun. And his whole attitude is how can we have distributed joy throughout the company? He said that people love working at Virgin as they're empowered to make a difference in the customer's life. There's a whole policy around the 100% human at work. So it's something we're looking into. I've got a whole book on it that I really want to understand. And as an example, Virgin launched a thing in their head office that has about 250 employees where they have unlimited leave. So there's no leave policy. Like the logic is that Kevin and I are working as business partners. I need a holiday, sure. He needs a holiday, sure. But there's no real leave policy because neither of us is going to drop each other or the team in it. So it's all about how teams actually work. And it's just amazing that whole handing over that autonomous authority really in terms of what's happening. He spoke a lot about people, planet, profit. And then Gene from Virgin Unite said that all of us when we were kids wanted to be a superhero, but now we need to really focus on, rather than being Superman, we need to focus on super collaboration and how we can bring all the different parties together and really look at doing things that can change the world. And she finished off with a statement, be the change in the world you want to see. The next one, which was really interesting to me because I've been working far too hard, and like Cliff said, I'm sitting next to Kevin here, who's also working far too hard. And it was all about health. And I didn't pick this up in 2015, but it came through so clearly in 2016. Now, this is a man who's 65 years old. He's healthier than most 45-year-olds I know. He's fitter than most 45-year-olds. He's in good shape. And, he literally said the number one thing for him, his number one asset is his health. I've already mentioned he plays tennis twice a day against a pro. He goes kite surfing every afternoon when there's wind, which is most afternoons. He has no cell phone. There's no way to get hold of him. He has no meetings. Unless they're organized, there's no last minute meetings. He only does everything by business, by email. So you put your email in, he can read it, he can reply. He's in complete control of his time. And something else I found fascinating is he's not scared to cut people off, but politely. So if you're wasting your time and, he gets pitched his whole, it must be awful actually. He literally just goes, thank you very much, Kevin. He turns to the person on the right hand side of the table and goes, what do you do in the world? And it was amazing to watch how polite he was, but how he also wouldn't let people waste his time. So this is the most amazing quote, one of the most amazing quotes I got from the week. Your mind shapes your destiny and your life. So I've often said your decisions shape your destiny and your life, but it's actually your mind shapes your destiny and your life. And they spoke a lot about mindset as a choice, and they spoke a lot about daily rituals. And there's a guy called Matt that was that 35-year-old that's got 15 different companies. I've got a wealth insight with him about his daily ritual, what he does every single morning, and how it really gets him pumped and juiced. And us South Africans, I promise you, you'll laugh, but it really is quite amazing. He's one of the happiest, most contented, down-to-earth, chilled-out people I know, and he runs 15 companies around the world. And then Siobhan also spoke about meditation and she's got a thing called Super Brain Yoga, which comes from, I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you seen it before? Have you seen it? I've never seen it before. Apparently it comes from like the Egyptians and India and China and like ancient. And anyway, so she's actually done a wealth insight for us. It's literally a 2-minute ritual that you can do every single day, and it brings balance to your left and right brain and breathing and everything else. And you don't need any fancy machines or equipment. You just need the diligence for 2 minutes a day. And something she said to me, which I'm not very proud of, she said, body is a reflection of the mind. So I clearly need to work on that. And this one I think is important. Where you live matters. Your environment matters. So when you look at this island behind, Richard spoke a lot about how just living here inspires him with creativity and the right type of energy. And he brings these amazing entrepreneurs and elders and whatever to this island. And it's just constantly this good energy around him that helps him be creative and think. And, I feel very strongly, we live in Neisner, and I believe the water, think about all the energy in the water and the impact that has on just the lifestyle and everything else. So, where you live really matters, and also your environment matters. The 5 people that you hang around with most is really, really important. And a lot of the guys spoke about how you've got to fire people that are negative or fire people that, that whole, it's, we keep great people in companies because they're great, but actually they're negative. We should just get rid of them, like cut out cancer. And then the last point on health that I loved was a guy called Jeff. What's Jeff's surname now? Jeff Walker. Another one of the top 5 internet marketers, business people in the world. Right up there with Frank Kern, etc. And he spoke a lot about balance and how every single Friday he took it off to go either mountain biking when it was sunny or skiing when it was. He lives in the Rockies, and he had a comment that I loved, and it's something I've tried to do with Kelly. Like, we'll have family time and then we'll have family holidays. And, it's a lot about taking the big rocks, which Stephen Covey talks about, and putting them in first. But what I loved was he made a comment. He said, if you're going to play big, play big in every part of your life. So don't just play big at work or play big in money. Like, play big in every part of your life, which I really loved. I've spoken a bit about the learning side. One of the things that the ladies from Virgin Unite spoke about is that the elders, 2 things about the elders. And the elders are like Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, Jimmy Carter, that they brought together to sort out world conflicts. And they said, what is the number one thing that all the elders share in common? And it was learning. They constantly have a never-ending, attitude around learning. And then what has helped them get to where they are is that they're only as good as their partnerships. So that's really interesting. It's all about the partnerships you build, etc., etc. We spend a whole long time on family and how you can create great families, in the entrepreneurial environment. If you haven't read the book, The 5 Love Languages, I highly, highly recommend that. Putting pictures up of your kids. So this is quite a cool thing. I know it's common sense, but like your kids do these little drawings, and the one guy said, like, laminate them, put them up on the wall. Like, your kid will appreciate it, and they also grow up very quickly, and you need to remind yourself. One that I loved, we had a lot of conversation around, is teach your kids to be, to have grit and to be uncomfortable. And one of the parents actually spoke about the adversity quotient and how they've done all these studies around the world, and there's only one factor that comes through each and every time with successful people, and that's that they've dealt with adversity. They know how to deal with adversity. And so they said, even if you grow up in a wealthy family with lots of money and really the kids don't have a lot to kind of, feel adversity about, you have to create adversity. And, in the movie Don't Look Down, Richard's mother talks about how, he was literally at the age of 6 or 7, like left 4 or 5 miles from home and had to make his way home. Or when he did the hot air balloon, his mother literally like looks into the camera and goes, I was really, really worried, and, there's a good chance he would die, but I would never tell him that. He needs our full support that he will be successful at this. And, it was just amazing the attitude of parents. And one of the parents said that she actually bribes her children to go the wrong way down a travelator because you don't want them to grow up normal. You don't want them to grow up the same as everyone else. You want them to think out the box and think that they're different. And, I think that's pretty awesome. You also, we spoke a lot about, I spoke a lot about, Kelly and I have a relationship coach. We spoke about how great people like Tiger Woods, have a golf coach because they want to be the best in the world. The Springboks have a rugby coach so they can be the best in the world. business people generally have a business coach so they can be great at business, but I asked the question, why don't most people have a relationship coach? And Kelly and I do, and it's been really, really wonderful for our relationship. And then we spoke about blocking out time. When you're dealing with all these time zones, we have this time where we block it out from 5 till 8, and then every Thursday night we do date night. And ironically, you get very busy in life, but if you don't block out these times, then it becomes a problem. And then, the last two things which I think are important here is that one was the future vision, and someone gave a quote by Van Gogh that says he used to dream his painting and then paint his dream. How cool is that statement? So I want to give that to you again. He used to dream his painting and then paint his dream. And everyone was speaking about goals. Matt Patton went into a huge amount of detail, and I'm pretty good with my goals, but he was just at another level, and he was just showing like how all the stuff's coming true. Like last year he couldn't kite surf, and this year he's kite surfed in the 7 best places in the world. He's not only kite surfing, he's ramping in there and doing tricks and everything. So I went from the best kite surfer to like intermediate, but he's literally kite surfed in 7 places around the world, which is one of his goals. And then Roger talks about the future vision, and I have explained it already tonight, where you take yourself a year from now and you write in the present tense about everything that happened for the year and what you're grateful for and why you're grateful for and how it happened. And it really makes the future in the present. And you can share that with people. I can show you just quickly if this comes through. I was hoping it would come through. I don't know how to bring my desktop up quickly. But anyway, I was going to try and show you my desktop. But I've got all my goals and everything up there. And a lot of people don't put their goals up. But okay, sorry, there's the screen I was looking for. And this is, I've shown the story, and some of you have seen it before. But my desktop always has my annual goals, my quarterly goals, my poem that's very important to me, and then pictures. And when I moved to Neisner, I went on Google, and I literally wanted a boat that could go out through the heads. And so I went on Google, and I found a picture. It's literally just a random picture. And then it was the end of November, and I went down to the boat shop, and I said, listen, I want to buy a boat like this that can go out through the heads. And the guy said, listen, there's nothing you can do. They've all sold out until March. Now, if you live in South Africa, you want to have your boat over Christmas. It's ridiculous. He said, but by the way, I bought this one boat, and it's going to come down, and we just buy it on spec, and we just sell it to the first person from Joburg that turns up and buys it. And I said, well, can I have first option on it? He said, yep, no problem. So I had no ability to choose anything, no colors, no color schemes, no fabric, nothing. And you can see there the picture, just a random Google picture. So there's the random Google picture that you can see up on the screen. And what was really interesting is when that boat arrived, there is my boat with my wife and my son. Look at the color scheme. It's exactly the same. The exact same color, the exact same width. When you look at the upholstery, it's actually freaky, even the distances of the upholstery. And even when you look at the front, you can look at the front markings. Like it was 100% replica of just a random picture I found on the internet. And I often say to people, be careful of what you dream, be careful of what you ask for, because you never know, it might just actually come true. And that comes to the question a lot of people say, well, so how do I get to Neck Island? Well, back in 2010, well, many, many years before 2010, but I set a goal to meet Richard Branson. And in 2010, I met him, granted for about 30 seconds, while he signed my book of his. And then it was 2012, where I actually saw a YouTube video of Roger Hamilton on Neck Island. And I was like, what? You can even go to Neck Island? I didn't even know that was physically possible. And so I set myself a goal, and I was like, well, this is exactly what I'm going to do going forward. And so I asked Roger, and I said, what have I actually got to do to be able to get to Neck Island? And hopefully I'm going to just share with you some pictures here. But it really is a spectacular place. That there is the temple. This is the lake down below. This is the grand house here. And I'm not sure if I can close this side of it. Let's see if I can get my pictures. Oh, there we are. And I'm just going to share with you pictures here. But for me, this is the sunset, obviously. I set it as a goal, and I had no idea how to do it. I had no idea how to meet the right people. I had no idea how I could afford it, because you've got to make a sizable donation to Virgin Unite. But the point is, I got very clear on what I wanted and why I wanted it, and then I worked backwards. And I actually got invited. There's a group of entrepreneurs, as I said, that 20 of them that get together once a year, and they go to NECA. They're invited by Richard to discuss, technology and how they can solve grand challenges. And through 2 or 3 people I know, I got invited into the group. And now I've been invited twice a year. Obviously did something right this year, because and trust me, there was a guy that came this year that won't be invited back. I can promise you. So the point being is that and it's really an amazing group of people. And my point being is that for some of you, if it's something that you're interested in, maybe let me know, and I can, if you're the right type of person, because my job is to try and keep the caliber at the same level. But I can certainly put you in contact with. It's got nothing to do with me, but it's about a threshold of. But most importantly, the purpose of the story wasn't about necessarily going to NECA tomorrow morning, but it's setting yourself goals and then turning them into a reality. So this is all of us sitting around at one of the business sessions. That's John, the guy that sold his business for $800 million. That there is Yannick Silver, one of the most famous internet business marketers, whatever you want to call it. This is Richard's more private home. So NECA is his private island. This is his even more private Mosquito Island, which is 4 Ks away. And I just thought I'd show you, this is just views from his pool. That's NECA Island back there in the distance. This is the jacuzzi from his kids. So basically they built all these chalets for his children to come and chill out at his more private house. This is his pool and private pool and out on the rocks, etc. That's the pool looking back the other way. This is on Mosquito Island. John actually has bought an island plot right on the top of that hill there. So he bought it for $15 million, and Bonner from U2 offered him 30, and he turned it down. And just if you want to understand numbers, and if you want to get completely freaked out, and I probably shouldn't tell you this, but it fascinates me, the HOA fees. Do you have any idea, Kevin, how much the HOA fees are per month? So just to be clear there, that stands for Homeowners Association. It's like your rates and taxes. Do you have any idea how much it costs per month?
I don't know. $1,000?
50,000 US dollars. Okay, so that's, just to put in context, 750,000 Rand every month just for your HOA fees. You haven't done anything else yet. You just paid for your HOA fees. It's just like, it's at another level. Like, it's just, so that's the boat, the NECA Bell, which is there. It sleeps 12 people, which is the, the boat. This was just us having dinner. That guy, Simon, and myself. And that's the thing I enjoy most, is that you're sitting around, you're having the conversations. This is not you're not going to an event with 1,000 people or whatever. I mean, there's literally a couple of you sitting around having dinner and having conversations. That, I have no idea why it's in there. This was Richard in one of the sessions. He loves pranking, so we're all dressed up like lemurs. And this was a context we did for Virgin Unite on how to raise money for them. This is another wealth insight that if you want to go and watch, I showed you how to make $46,000 in less than 2 minutes, and basically how to pitch Richard Branson, because this was him literally explaining, what happens and how it works, etc. Again, I can't remember why that's in there. This was him when we were just playing tennis, and this was just some of the guys playing tennis with him. So that's a cool thing. Like, it's not a show thing. Like, it's literally like Kevin and I going away for a week, and we're just doing cool shit together, playing tennis and kite surfing. That's a view of NECA with the sun going down from the boat. I love this little picture. It comes from Yannick Silver, and it's creation, culture, community, and then you've got cause, and then you've got you, and it's about money, it's about your heart, and it's about having fun. How cool is that, huh? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. He's got a great book, which I can't remember now. go and look up Yannick Silver. I can't remember. And this is just kind of the main pool. That's how lunch was served on the day, floating in, guys playing chess. Having fun. This was the guys spraying each other with water. Him and Yannick talking about just various Q&A sessions at dinner. I think you've seen some of these party pictures, so I'm not going to bore you with that. This was the zip line, just by the way. I'm not quite sure why some of these are in here, but anyway, it's my NECA lessons, so some of you have seen these. This is just one of the beaches, the zip line. So it's all fun. Everything's designed for fun. And I wanted to finish with the pictures on this story. And there's a great lesson on this, and there's a wealth insight, but I'm going to give it to you for free tonight, where most people in life say they can't have something, or they say they can't afford it. In my family, it was the same thing. It's like, well, you can't have this because you don't have the money, or this or that. And, I always use for me personally, the metaphor of the flamingos whenever I think of something. So Richard Branson wanted flamingos on his island. So he looked into the cost of the flamingos, and they were quite expensive. And anyway, so he thought to himself, well, how can I have flamingos, but someone else pays for the flamingos? So what he did is that in the British Virgin Islands, you've got these big boats that go up and down, the tour cruises, and they all want to come on NECA Island. So what he did is he agreed that 4 times a year they can stop and come on NECA Island and look at the flamingos. But those 4 boat cruises pay for the flamingos, the upkeep, the looking after the flamingos. But he lives up on the hill. That's his house. And he's got a lake on 2 sides with flamingos. And so for 4 days a year, he's inconvenienced by people coming to look at the flamingos. And for 61 days a year, he gets the flamingos for free. It's a brilliant metaphor when you think about it. You know, you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. You know, which is really what we've been trying to say. And I think this is just some more pictures. There was us going kite surfing in flamingo suits. Not flamingo suits, in lemur suits. And I think this is just some views out over the pool, the rimflood pool, and down to the beaches. You've seen some of these party pictures, so I'm not going to bore you. That was just a lunch. You can see Richard sitting there and we're just having conversations. And that's the one I wanted to finish off with, which what's interesting is there you can see him, and he's like a naughty kid, guys. He's 65 years old. He's dressed like a lemur. He's fully into the fun. You know, he did all the activities himself. And, you know, really, I finish off on the picture side with from Richard's perspective, life is about fun. It's about passion. It's about purpose. And, you know, he's 65. He's all about pranking and having fun, you know. And, you know, I've met a lot of wealthy, successful people, and they're so boring. And, you know, I think Henny's another great example. Hilda's another great example of people that just really go out there and enjoy life and live it to the full. So I wanted to finish with just some things on purpose. The Dalai Lama said, imagine what your life would be if you didn't doubt yourself. It's quite interesting. Imagine what your life would be if you didn't doubt yourself. One of the, she's actually a Sherma, I don't exactly know what that means, but it's all about energy. She said it's a metaphor when people go up a mountain, that most people get 3/4 of the way up and the environment changes, and once they get to 3/4 of the way up the mountain, that's where it gets, you know, humid and wet and moisture, and, you know, and it gets difficult. You start sliding back. And she said that's where most people in life give up. And it was really interesting for me because I've climbed Kilimanjaro, and I thought to myself, that's the truth, actually, you know. That's where it got really difficult, and that's where most people, ordinary people, give up. And that's just the point where you really have to push on and never, ever, ever give up. And she spoke a lot about purpose and how the closer you're getting to your purpose, the more it feels like you're about to break the sound barrier. You know, I certainly feel like that, Kevin. I don't know about yourself, but what we're doing and our purpose and solving the wealth gap, etc., you know, it feels like the closer we get, the harder it gets, you know, in terms of where we're at. But I think really to finish, they spoke a lot about how you can believe so strongly in something. You don't even know how it's going to work, but you just believe so strongly it's going to work. You know, I always use the metaphor of Steve Jobs with the iPad. Have you got the webcam there? And you know, in 1977, he said one day we'll have a digital book. And you can imagine computers were the size of, you know, this table. And in 2010, he launched the iPad. And I always say to people, you know, if you believe strongly enough, even if you don't know how, if you get very clear on the why, then you're going to figure it out. And it took him 33 years, but we finally had a digital book. So those were the lessons that really, and some of the stuff that we look for. Would you just mind looking and seeing if there's any great questions that we want to go through? And just while Kevin's looking, I wanted to share with you just very quickly, I had to do a talk to some children at Oak Hill, which is a private school in Iceland, just on Friday. I just thought I would share this with you very quickly. I don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but there's 12 laws or that I basically call the entrepreneurial code, which again, I'm happy to share with people. But the first one is that rules are made to be broken. So this is a poem that I wrote. Who made the rules? The rules once said that the world was flat, that we couldn't fly or go to the moon, that females couldn't vote or America have a black president. Ignore the rules, follow the laws of nature, and realize your destiny. So if you know me well enough, I truly believe that all rules have been put there to be challenged. And generally when you say to someone who made the rules, or they tell you it's the rules, they can't tell you why. The second one is, are you going to do something which is going to change the world? You know, Larry Page from Google always says, are you going to do something that's going to change the world, or are you just trying to create a business? And I think Elon Musk is probably the best example of that. You know, the average car has 16,000 parts. The Tesla has 400, and it's broken every rating in every car company in the world. So, you know, go out there and do something that's going to change the world. I don't have time to go into this, but I highly recommend you go and look it up from Roger Hamilton. You know, do what you love and have fun doing it. You know, find out what your skill set is and go and do that. You know, Oprah Winfrey would fail hopelessly with trying to be Warren Buffett. And, you know, Donald Trump would fail hopelessly if he was trying to be Mark Zuckerberg, and vice versa. So figure out who you are and go and do it. And whether you're a child or an adult, you know, figure it out. And then, you know, the beauty is that there's no right and there's no wrong. So if you know now that you are Warren Buffett, well, then you need the other profiles around here to build a great business. So, but most importantly, do what you love and have fun doing it. You know, this is one, again, that South Africans don't like hearing, but fail fast, fail forward, fail often. And it's very much a silicon thing. Launch stuff. If you launch a version and you're not embarrassed, you haven't launched quick enough, which is what the guy from LinkedIn said. But again, it's just you need to remember it. You heard this already tonight. Your mind creates your destiny and life. Nurture it. I think we all need to look after our health better. It's one that I need to listen to even better myself. And I could go into a lot in that, but I think it's self-explanatory. Impossible is a crazy idea until it's done. Most of you know this, the Steve Jobs quote about be careful of the crazy ones that say they're going to change the world. They often do. And, when you think about it, flying an airplane was a crazy idea until it happened. Going to the moon was a crazy idea until it happened. And maybe solving the wealth gap is a crazy idea until it happens. The seventh one is chaos is your best friend. In chaos, there's opportunity. I talk a lot about Zimbabwe and how, Zimbabwe was complete chaos, but there was also a massive opportunity. China is complete chaos, but there's also a massive opportunity. So rather than be scared of chaos, run at chaos. And what's beautiful is when you live in the emerging markets, we love chaos. We thrive in chaos. We know nothing but chaos. So, really go at it. And the eighth one is that problems equal business opportunities. So everyone's always trying to say, well, and I know a lot of people online tonight are entrepreneurial, so I'm not going to worry too much about this. But every time you see a problem, it equals an opportunity. And I know this doesn't come up very clearly here, but it says, I have fond memories of the days when the Rand was still strong. And the next person goes, back in the 90s. And the guy goes, no, back in 2015. And, every problem represents an opportunity. And, certainly why we're going into China is that $400 billion left China just last year. They want to invest in the first world just like South Africans do. And we want to help them, provide a solution to their problem. And then always look to add value. This one is really important to me. To risk nothing is to risk everything. Tony Robbins talks a lot about the success cycle. We're all born with the same potential. Some people take small action, they get small results, and their belief goes down, and it's a perpetual downward cycle. Some people take big action, they get big results, their belief goes up, and it's an upward spiral. You get to decide which part of the success cycle you're going to play on. And again, I'll share this with you. Number 10, no is just one step closer to getting a yes. Most people don't know this, but it takes 8 times on average to get rejected before you actually get a yes. So every time someone says no to you, just go, great, I'm one step closer to getting a yes. It's a fundamental thing, and some of you have heard me say this, but South Africans are actually pretty good at this. And we believe it's because the word no in Afrikaans, N-O-U, means now. So when we hear no, we actually think we have to do something now. And 11 is be constantly learning. So I really want to applaud everyone who's online tonight. I really recommend a thing called Audible, which is A-U-D-I-B-L-E, which means you can get any audio book. It costs $7 or $8 a month, and you get access to the best information in the world. So if you're like me or Yaku or Henny, where you say, oh, I can't read or I don't read, that's rubbish, because you can plug it into your cell phone, you can listen to it while you're driving, walking, running. And I've shown you this already tonight, but teaching others is the best way to do this. So, maybe take some of these lessons, go and share it with your own team. Go share it with your family, go share it with your kids, go share it with your husband or wife. You'll be amazed how much more you actually internalize what it is that we're learning. And the 12th one, and probably one of the most important ones for me, is never ever give up. This is a picture of me running Comrades. I wasn't born with Bruce Fordyce's body, but I did make a commitment to myself at the age of 5 that I would run a Comrades up and down. I'm a Durban boy. You can probably notice from the time there that I failed on the way up in 2008. I got terrible cramps. I managed to last 33 kilometers with very bad cramps, but I didn't finish. But I came back and I finished. I got my up and my down. And even when I kite surf now around Necker Island, the boat came to pick me up 3 times because there was very little wind and I couldn't get back. But to be honest, I just kept persevering until I got home. It took me 3 hours longer than it was supposed to. But for me, it's really a fundamental principle. You just never, ever give up, because it's in that moment when everyone else is giving up that you actually make that breakthrough. And so really, I want to finish with the great man saying, money won't create success, the freedom to make it will. And, what I'm so excited about is with our digital platform and where everything's going is that the way to invest in property nowadays is so broken. And between the investor and the investment, there's generally 16 different middlemen. There's no trust. There's no transparency. There's no alignment. The only people that are making money are all the middlemen. And, now you've got the access and the opportunity to invest in literally the best properties around the world with the best partners in first world assets. And if you bear with me, I've got a little video I just want to share with you. And then I will finish off. I will conclude. I'll answer any questions that I've missed out. And I'll also share with you how you can invest in the best properties, with Henny, around the world with as little as $100. So let me share with you this
Real
video.
estate. It's one of the most reliable and profitable investments in the world. 49% of the world's wealth is held in real estate. It's what built the wealth of kings and aristocrats. But investing in real estate for the average person is simply out of reach. It's a playground normally reserved for millionaires or billionaires. Only the top 0.1% of people own and invest in commercial real estate. There's a wealth gap across the globe that's pricing out the middle class from investing in one of the best ways to build and preserve wealth, which will enable them to give their children a better future. Studies prove that children who grow up in households who have stable financial futures do better in life. That's a fact. But too many people don't have access to it. We want to change that. Let's open up the opportunity to people who work hard, manage their finances wisely, and need a place to invest for their family's future. What we're doing at Wealth Migrate is exactly that. It's simple, but incredibly powerful. We're eliminating the typical barriers to entry when investing in real estate, whether that's knowledge, money, experience, or access. Access to what the top investors know and are able to invest in, but that you can't. We're giving people the opportunity to invest globally in commercial real estate through the internet, right alongside high-profile investors, and earn the same returns and monthly dividends. We're using the internet and our technology to give everyone access to real estate opportunities you've never had access to before. By giving you access to global real estate investing, our goal is to empower 1 billion people by 2020 and close the wealth gap that currently exists. It's one we know we can achieve through something we already know works: crowdfunding. By using crowdfunding to fund real estate projects, you don't need to invest huge amounts of money to become a part owner of a project. It levels the playing field and helps developers start new projects. It's a win-win for everyone, and our experience is second to none. Clients have trusted us to facilitate investments of over $1.34 billion on 5 continents over 3 decades. We've published 19 books, including New York Times bestsellers. And then there's our technology, our secret sauce that helps you make smart investments. Now it's your time to grab this opportunity. Do it now with our trusted, secure real estate investment platform. Visit www.wealthmigrate.com to see what amazing opportunities are available right now.
So for all of you online, Kevin's been amazing tonight, and he's actually shared. If you go to the handouts, you can actually see my notes that are there that I put together. I'll need to add the entrepreneurship code because I've done them already from last week for the children. So I just wanted to share with you lastly something that I'm really, really excited about. You know, Freedom Day was the day Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. Is that right? Have I got that right now?
No.
What was it again? Sorry, it was our election day. Sorry, I'm a trigger in 94. Like, we didn't learn history when it was happening. So anyway, but yeah. So it was our election day, and I think, I mean, it really symbolizes kind of freedom, and obviously from a country perspective in South Africa, it was freedom for everyone. But what we're really excited about is that the 27th of April is what we call it Freedom Day, because it's Economic Freedom Day. And you can literally go to the website, freedomday.wealthmigrate.com, and you'll actually see that you can sign up. And we're going to be allowing people to not at the moment everyone, but a limited number of people. It's going to be by a random draw, but you can go online, you can say where you want to invest, but ultimately you can put down, and the smallest amount of money is $100. And I feel very, very passionately that we can really start to make an impact on changing the world for people if they can invest with as little. And the reason we've been able to do it is that we've now built a digital exchange, which, just like every other technology, brings down the cost dramatically, cuts out the middlemen, and increases the efficiency and the accessibility. For those of you who do register, you'll get access to all 3 of our white papers, which are, you know, if you're a beginner, it's the 5 laws to building wealth through real estate. If you're an intermediate investor, the 5 keys to offshore real estate investment. And if you're, you know, an advanced, the 5 ways to expand your global real estate portfolio through strategic partnerships. You know, these have been built, you know, written by myself and Henny and the team in conjunction with the collective experience, Dolph as well. And really, you know, our guides to really help people be successful. If you want to go to one of our competitors and invest overseas, please do that. but please make sure you read the guide first so that you don't lose money or make mistakes. If for anyone that registers, they'll get a free copy of my ebook. Again, Properly Going Global. We want to share the knowledge, and I'm currently trying to write version 2, which is proving to be quite tricky, but updating it. And also, anyone that registers will get 30 videos from Dr. Dolph DeRoos. He's done them effectively like a mentoring type session with lessons, etc. He's one of the most respected people. He's worked with Tony Robbins, Dolph DeRoos, Robert Kiyosaki, just to name a few. And then really what is exciting is that you'll get the opportunity to invest in residential and commercial opportunities in England, America, and Australia. And as I said, for some people for $100, and with time it'll be everyone with $100. So if you are interested, go on, sign up, register, and you'll be able to get access to it. And then for those who want to invest with surety and know that they can definitely invest, the good news is it's now down to $10,000 or £10,000, where you can actually go online and invest and ultimately take advantage. And if you sophisticated investors that want to invest 50,000 or more, just type in there sophisticated or asset manager, and they can actually sit with you and talk about portfolios and where you want to invest and how you want to invest. It's different thresholds that we've been looking for at. And I want to thank all of you for putting in the information tonight as well in terms of what you're looking at. Obviously, we're looking to share, but it's also interesting to us as to what people are interested in terms of where they are. And then the other thing that I just want to mention is that we've got some really cool webinars coming up. So this week we've got 2 webinars. I don't know if they're going to happen this week or early next week, but one on the residential side with everything that Yaku and Fawn found on the ground in terms of residential opportunities in America, and then also Michiel and Henny going through all the medical opportunities. Pardon? Thursday at 3 p.m. So if you're interested in those, just type in there commercial or residential, and we can send you. We're not going to be sending out a bulk email, but it's going to be, it's going to be more of a closed thing. And then in the month of May, we're having a whole month around empowerment, where I'll be doing a webinar on literally how to get started. I did my first property deal when I was 13, and I will share with people this. And I had no money, I had no silver spoon in my mouth, so we'll share with people how to get started. We've got a great one, I think, with Garth Wellman on tax and structuring, and to be fair, what the wealthiest people around the world are doing. We've got Dr. Dolph DeRoos, we've got Roger Hamilton, and we've got a 5th person. We were hoping it would be Clem Santa, but he's not available in May, so that's going to be delayed till June or July. But we'll get another great person. The idea is to have 5 great webinars right through the month. So, please, I'd ask if this is value, go out there, tell your friends, invite them. Probably our why now. Our most important why is sharing the knowledge and trying our best to solve that wealth gap, and then providing solutions for people so they can do it. So in conclusion, I will finish off and then I'll answer the questions. Our vision is a lot of people don't know what a family office is, and there's a great definition here of what a family office is. But in simple terms, family offices are out there to help very, very wealthy families, billionaires, etc., look after their wealth, and they bespokely understand the family and their needs, and then they go out and they look at all the world's information and they say, well, based on your needs, you should do this. And our dream really is to say, why can we not put a family office in every single person's pocket? Why can this gadget not take your bespoke personal needs and help you decide what are the right investments all over the world? You would have access to invest anywhere in the world. It would also help you future-proof yourself. So if you make this investment, what will it mean in 10 years' time? If I invest in South Africa, I get to retire in 12 years. If I invest in America, I get to retire in 8 years. And rather than guessing, you've got the fundamental algorithms, the artificial intelligence, to be able to make that happen. So that's our dream, to put a family office in everyone's pocket, which we believe will ultimately solve the wealth gap. And, I always say to people, they go, no, it's not possible. Well, I remind them of 2 things. One is the iPad, and the last one is the comment that limits exist only in the mind. And on that note, I'm going to leave that screen up, and I want to answer just a couple of the questions that have come up here. So someone asked me where NECA will be by 2050. I think it was Cliff. And Cliff, it's interesting. It's got quite high hills. So every day I'm there, I like to run around the island. It's got quite high hills. So, if global warming is going to rise a meter or 2, NECA will be perfectly fine, because it's got quite a lot of topography. I don't know if that's what you were asking. Either that, or we would have persuaded Richard Branson or his heirs to sell it to us, and we're going to crowdfund it, which I did, by the way, put as an option to him, and I actually got ran out of the room pretty much He didn't like that idea much at all. Was there a chap from Galway there this year? So, and yes, there was, but he only came for the day just to listen to talks. Apparently, he's like the 4-hour work week, the Tim Ferriss of Ireland, and he is from Galway. Really nice guy. I can't remember his name right now, but I did meet him. Really, really great guy. Evolved Enterprise. Thank you, Werner, for sharing that. So that's Yannick's book. Okay, Mike, this is a good question. My question is about employees. How we can make it work when you have cheap employees because you cannot pay the good ones, as they will take all the profit. Where and how you cross that line. So, Juan, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. That's a great question. And to be honest, I've played this game myself. So when I started my business over 12 years ago, I always had a poverty mindset or a scarcity mindset, saying I don't have enough money, I can't do it, I can't employ people, I must do everything myself. If I do hire people, I must hire the lowest skilled people because that's all I can afford. And really, it was Roger Hamilton in 2009, 2010 that said to me, Scott, if you really want to take this thing to the next level, you've got to go out there and you've got to find a great person. And ironically, it was Jaco Maritz. I headhunted him. It took me a couple of years to get him. The amount of money that I had to pay was astronomical in those days for me. It was really quite a big financial risk. But I tried for 10 years to systemize my business. And Jaco did more systems in 6 months than I did in 10 years. So I was allowed to play in my brilliance, and he was allowed to play in his brilliance. Because of that, it allowed IPS to continue to function on its own, and ultimately me to go out and build Wealth Migrate. And that, that's just happened more and more. I mean, I've got Kevin sitting next to me here. He cum laude his MBA. I can't explain to you how good he is and how much value he brings to the team. Low for you. I mean, I could go on and on and on with these great people that you just think you could never, ever afford. And yet, when they come on and the value they add, you're like, how did I ever live without that? And so what actually happens is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because really, I would challenge you and I'd say there's two mindsets in the world. You've got scarcity mentality or you've got abundance mentality. With a scarcity mentality, you're going to go, well, I can only get cheap people. I don't want them to take all the profit. Or you could say, listen, I've got abundance mentality. I might take 3 to 6 months of pain, but I've got great people and I'll earn 10 times the profit. Or if you really want to extrapolate that with the big picture of Necker Island behind me, if I hire the best in the world, so Richard Branson taught me this last year, hire the best people in the world, set them up for success, and get out of their way. And if you do that, you can live on an island with 400, businesses, and they all feel great because they're empowered to do what they want to do, et cetera, et cetera. So I really challenge that for all of us. And even as South Africans, we think that, $15,000 or $20,000 is a lot of money, but yet that's what people get paid overseas. So we're like, well, we can't afford a foreign person. Well, I challenge you on that, because the more I deal with foreign people, the more it brings a different perspective. Right. Thank you for all the kind comments. I appreciate them. When are the medical opportunities launching in Australia? Dimitri, Henny's going over in 2 weeks. So he's working on that. And yeah, we had a meeting yesterday. I think you and I spoke on the phone about it. So there's a huge amount in the pipeline. Okay, we'll wait for recording. Maybe not the platform, but the online buyers tour was overwhelming. Okay, maybe not the platform, but the online buyers tour was overwhelming. So many options: Atlanta, Memphis, Austin, Dallas, residential, commercial. It seems too varied and lacking focus. Comments, please. So great question, Ian. And that's why we're going to do 2 webinars, one for residential, one for commercial. But what I would highly recommend for Ian is that, talk to an asset manager. Different products suit different people. With our experience, we can tell you what we've done in the past. We can't give financial advice, but we can tell you what we're investing in certain areas and why we're investing. And, I understand it's overwhelming. Trust me, when I arrived in America back in 2010, spent 5 weeks there going all over, I didn't know where to start. I couldn't tell you the difference from my, that's not politically correct. I'd say ask from my elbow is what I was going to say. But anyway, whereas we've been doing it now, one of our team members, have been going every single year, 4 times a year. So we can certainly really help. Dimitri, thanks for the kind words on Property Going Global. You and my mother are the only 2 that have actually read it, so I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I can see different people asking for the commercial and the residential. That's obviously for the webinars. So if you're interested in the commercial webinar, just type in their commercial. If you're interested in residential, just type in their residential.
Scott, not to interrupt you there, if I just wanted to point out there are still people putting in crib notes, etc. So on your screen under handouts, we have put the notes up there, so you'll be able to see those. And then in the chat box, there are a number of links that I put in there. The one right at the bottom is actually the link for the commercial webinar. So you can just click on that link and register right now. So, if you want to take a look at all those links from the books that Scott has spoken about to the YouTube videos he's mentioned, they're all there. So, before the webinar ends, do, click on all of those and get them into your.
Because there's no way to get it afterwards.
There's no way to get it.
You're going to have to ask a couple more questions to keep us going, so we don't switch this thing off. But but just on a serious note, so that is there. And if anyone's watching the recording afterwards, you're going to have to go to the wealthmigrate.com or freedomday.wealthmigrate.com and sign up and contact us, get hold of us. If you're watching this on YouTube. So, any more questions, guys? I'll stay online for 4 or 5 more minutes till 9 o'clock. I think it's reasonable to work from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. I think I'm allowed to go home at 9 p.m. So, any more questions here? I see the webinars are between 3 to 5. Can these possibly not be on a later time? They will be recorded and on YouTube afterwards. I think the important thing is that when we're doing work-related webinars, we are tending to try and do them during the day. It's amazing. We get pros and cons for doing, webinars in the evening. So we're tending to do more of the educational stuff in the evening and then the direct opportunities during the day. So I think that was the logic.
And then just Dimitri, for that question, register for the webinar, because then you'll be sent an email with the recording link in it once the webinar is done, which does make your life a lot easier. You then know that it's coming. Or what you can do is subscribe to the channel, and you can also, there's a webinar playlist, so you can keep that in mind as well, and always go back to the webinar playlist to make your life easier.
Yeah, the only advantage of being live is that you can ask questions.
Absolutely.
So just a quick one. It's 2 or 3 minutes. Come on, let's have a really great question. What's a question you've always wanted to ask Richard Branson? Because I'm almost without fail, I've either heard someone else ask it, or I've tried to ask it, or whatever. And I'm not being arrogant. It's just most of us have the same sort of questions. So I'm just fascinated. Is there any other question that you would like to know? And I'll try and answer it. If I can't answer it, I can't answer it. But I'd just like to know if he's been answered. Anyone else got any questions that they'd like to know? Or to be honest, Kevin, because he's also incredibly successful. And if you want, I always joke in Nick, I'm the dumbest, poorest guy on the island. So if you want, insight from the dumbest, poorest guy, then that would be me. So this is quite a good one. How do you manage risk? So ironically, Chris, I learned this from my uncle, and I know Richard Branson does exactly the same thing. So my uncle taught me when I was in my early 20s, work out what the worst case scenario is, and everything else is upside. And so what Richard Branson does, and to be honest, I've done that in business. So you always work out what the worst case scenario is, and if you can manage that, then everything else is upside. So if you look at property, work out what the worst case scenario is if everything goes wrong, and you can manage that, then everything else is upside. Well, in business, he does the same thing. So he always protects the downside. He always ring fences his investments. So if the airline business went bankrupt, it didn't take the Virgin record store down with it. So it's the exact same principle of working on what the worst case scenario is and then figuring out how to manage that risk. Will you ever retire? What is retire, with all due respect, Green? I don't know too many people that are 65, play tennis against a tennis pro twice a day, kite surf most afternoons, walk around in your shorts, no shoes, a t-shirt, and live on a tropical island. Like, I'm not quite sure if that's not retirement, what retirement actually is. And I'm not being facetious. I think really I probably share, I probably need to slow down a bit and probably spend a bit more time with my family personally. But I mean, I love what I do. This is not a job. I'm not sitting here, checking the hours and figuring out how much my hourly rate is tonight or something, So I think retire is probably, it's never going to happen. No, I think he's going to do it till, he loves what he does. And in the same way, myself, I love what I do, and I'll be doing it till I'm dead. You know what I mean? So I doubt he'll retire. Dimitri said, how do you control running 400 companies? What a great question. So this is a question I must have asked him 6 times. Because every time I think that I'm busy and I have a complex life, I just think to myself, well, I'm not the first person, and he has 400 companies. And if every single person in every single, if every CEO in every company just sent him one text message a day, that's 400 text messages, and he couldn't deal with it. So, the answer that I got, and I did mention it earlier, he has no cell phone, so he never carries a cell phone on him. He has no meetings. He's got two very, very efficient executive assistants that pretty much, are gatekeeper beyond gatekeeper. He answers everything by email so that he can manage his time. And most importantly, he controls his time. And then it's actually a wealth insight, because I asked him, I said, you've got all these charities. I didn't actually ask him, it was one of the girls sitting next to me. I asked him, you've got all these charities, you've got all these businesses, how do you even know what to do? And he said, you just prioritize it. It comes back to the one thing. What's the most important thing that needs to be solved today, this week, etc. And that's what he focuses on. But he definitely doesn't let his family or his health or anything be jeopardized. So, I think I don't have all the answers, Dimitri, but it's certainly something that I've been, following. And I think also the last thing I would say on that is what I said earlier about hiring great people, set them up for success and get out of their way. So it's all about delegation, setting up the systems so that they can autonomously run, be empowered, so they're not coming back to you to ask decisions all the time, which is something I need to learn very much so. Did you get to ask about the value question? No, Devet, I did not. I only had so many questions, dude. So I had to work through the questions as per what people voted on. Devet wanted to know how we could add value to him, and I don't know the answer. Although he is interested in fintech and he has invested in Indiegogo, and he is interested in changing the world, and he does want to empower 1 million entrepreneurs. So kind of with Lemonade Day and what we're doing, I'm working on it. Would you be interested in looking at crowdfunding in 9 trillion air travel? Hang on. Would you be interested in looking at crowdfunding in the 9 trillion air travel industry? I'll email you a concept if you're interested. So Sydney, I think it is something we'll definitely look at in the future. Right now we're focusing on real estate. It's our space. We know it. We're building the platforms. But I was talking to Lo, our CFO, tonight, and our platform now is, after property can go private equity, and I joke with people with pantyhose. There's no reason why, airplanes wouldn't be able to go onto that. But we would have to have partners that really are domain expertise in that vertical. But the platform and the expertise, the platform and the digital ability from a fintech perspective is there, and also from a global perspective. Do you have any fintech businesses, Teresa? I don't know, Teresa, do you want to answer that? I'd like to think so. Does he have any fintech businesses? Sorry, I was laughing because Teresa asked the question. So, yes, he does. He's invested in Indiegogo to start off with. I know they're launching Virgin Money again. I don't know where you would draw the line between them. He, by his own admission, has built businesses in a linear fashion and is trying to understand the exponential space himself. But yeah, it's a good question, actually. I'm sure if you do a Google search on the 400 businesses, you'll be able to find them. But I know for a fact he's invested in Indiegogo, which is one of the biggest crowdfunding platforms in the world, and he's also invested in a crowdfunding platform in England to help UK startups. So, he's definitely playing in that space and in the crowdfunding space. Okay, I think that's everything. I think if I keep asking questions, I might get delirious here and start telling the wrong thing. So, look, I think from our perspective, thanks to everyone. Thanks for the kind words. Hopefully it's been valuable. Never quite know what people want when we share. And so I think that's enough for this evening. We will be doing these, hopefully fairly regularly. And if you've got questions, and as I said, you now understand our why. We want to empower 1 billion people. If you think this is adding value to people, send them the recording, send them the Wealth Insights, sign up to the Wealth Insights, sign up to the Freedom Day launch, come and test us. If you think it's all a bunch of BS, $100 is not that much money to test. So, why not come and get the facts? And, just like I'll finish off with a little story, but in 1910, there was a guy called Henry Ford, and before he came along, cars were only available to the super wealthy. They were bespoke. They were made pretty much as toys. And they were made, literally individually per person. And Henry Ford came along and he said, why should cars not be available to everybody? And as you know, the rules were that you had to drive a car and have someone standing next to you to move away the livestock. It reminds me a lot of international property and specifically commercial property around the world. because it sounds very much like, you know, the old-fashioned car, where it's very bespoke. It's only for the ultra wealthy, and they are individually built for for one or two people. And you know, my attitude is, why can't we be Henry Ford? But we, you know, there are challenges on the regulation, there are challenges on the rules. We are, you know, 100% compliant, but people need to be able to think out the box. And once again, technology is going to provide a solution. And just like Henry Ford changed the landscape of the 20th century, you know, was the backbone of the American economy in the 20th century, we believe that fintech and the digital disruption and the 6 major trends we shared with you tonight will have the exact same impact. Whether you want to focus on it and understand it, that's your choice. Whether you don't, it's coming anyway. So thanks very much to everyone for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Have a lovely evening, and hopefully we speak soon. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Oh, sorry, guys. Thank you, Kevin, for all the help tonight. I really appreciate it. It's late, and it's really hard to do this on your own. So thanks for all the valuable input. It's really, really useful. So appreciate it.